There's about a million ways I could have phrased this quote, but I chose this because it's only 6 words. So what does this actually mean? And how have I used it to overcome disappointing competition results, or anything disappointing? I'll go over 3 examples of taking the quote into account, then I'll discuss the meaning. The first example comes from my second ever competition, Alternate Algorithms 2021. After competing in the first round of 2x2, I noticed that I finished 17th place, which meant that if I improved by 5 places in the next round, I would make finals, which would have been really cool for me. Then round 2 came the next day, and this happened. If not for those 2+2s, I'm pretty sure I would have made finals. So it obviously hurt that I missed out on finals by that much. But I knew that it already happened and I couldn't change it. But I also knew that it was a bit of a toss-up whether I would make finals or not in the first place. So I wanted to do something that I would improve my chances of making 2x2 finals at my next competition, Victorian Championships, in a few months. So I learnt CLL only for the comp to be cancelled, and I had to wait about 5 months for my next comp with 2x2, which was Geelong Says So Long. Admittedly, the second round had a bit of a shaky start with accounting 4, but I managed to clutch it in the last solve and I made finals, which was my goal. It was quite relieving and took all the pressure off, and I actually got a nice 285 average in the final round, which was PR for about a month, and it actually placed me 5th for the comp, which was cool. But if I never moved forward and not learnt CLL, I might not have made finals in the first place. The next example is also about 2x2. So in Melbourne Summer 2022, I somehow got 5th again in the final round, and there were like 175 total competitors in the event. So I figured that if I could just improve a little bit more, I could maybe podium. That's when I started to take one looking more seriously, and try to use some of it at Melbourne Mini Sunday, an upcoming comp with 2x2. However, I clearly wasn't ready to use it in comp, as I don't think I one-looked a single solve the entire competition. I did get a 282 average in the first round, which placed me 2nd, but I completely bombed the finals average and got a 339, and I missed out on podium by 0.07. Again, I could have been salty about it, but instead I used it as a wake-up call to start practicing one-looking again and use it more seriously at wonderful Williamstown. My first 2 averages of the comp were a 272 and a 291. That placed me 4th and 5th respectively. However, in finals, I managed to get a 239 PR average, which happened to place me 3rd for the competition, which meant that I podiumed. I did get a little lucky as the scrambles were quite nice, and also Cameron Stollery, who's also a very fast 2x2er, he did DNF his average by DNFing twice, but if I gave up on one looking and I didn't look forward, then my chance of podiuming would have been much lower. The next example comes from Victorian Open. So for Oceanic Championships later in the year, to qualify for Clock, you actually have to have a sub 12 official average, and because Clock was an upcoming event at Victorian Open, I figured that it wouldn't hurt to practice it a little bit, so I started grinding solves, pretty much the only good way to get good at Clock. So Victorian Open came, and the first solve was a DNF by an all-1, which is basically something like this in case you didn't know. Then I followed it up with an 11, a 10, and then a 9, which meant that I needed just under a 14 on the last solve for a sub 12 average. Unfortunately, as I got near the end of the solve, I noticed that an edge was off by an hour, which caused me to resolve the edge, which took me an extra 2 to 3 seconds, resulting in a 16 and a 1261 average. It obviously hurt that I missed automatic qualification by so little, but I wasn't totally mad about it. Why? Because I was aware I had another competition in the month Abbotsford Begins 2022 with 3 rounds of Clock. So I grinded even more, getting my global average to around 10. And I also focused on turning a little safer to prevent DNFs. Then a month later, I completed in Clock Run 1 at Abbotsford Begins, and it's safe to say that I went a lot better. 3 10s and 1 8 in the first 4 solves, which guaranteed a 10 average at worst, and I qualified for Oceanics. This also easily got me to round 2, where I did so much better as there weren't any nerves. I managed to count an 8, a 9 and a 10, resulting in a very nice 941 average. Finals I sort of bombed, although I did get an 840 PR single and the average was still sub 12 despite the counting 15. So what does this quote actually mean? If you haven't figured it out already, it's about recovering from disappointing or bad moments, and how to keep a good mindset through them. For the first example, missing out on 2x2 finals hurt, but I couldn't change that unless I was some sort of time traveler. I couldn't change the past. So what I did from there is I took actions to make sure that I would elevate my chances of making finals in my next competition. And it went well, so I kind of changed the future by learning something. You can figure out how the quote applies to the other 2 scenarios. I took an action to minimize the chances of the bad thing from happening. The moral of this video is to show you that whatever happened in the past stays there, and it can never be changed. But what you can change is the future, learning new algorithms, a new method, improving whatever aspect of your solves to make sure that you'll perform better next time. However, despite the fact that I've given 3 cubing examples in this video, this quote can literally apply to any disappointing, bad, even embarrassing moments. Anything from losing a sports match to failing a test to even forgetting about bringing an item on some trip. The bad thing happened, you can't change it, so change the future and minimize the chance of it happening again. I'll say it one more time. Change the future, not the past.